The global build-out for artificial intelligence requires $3 trillion. Right now, the vast majority of that capital is pouring into physical, concrete, and steel. We are watching the most capital-intensive industrial expansion in modern economic history take shape. Yet retail investors are still overwhelmingly focused on buying shares of chip designers like NVIDIA and AMD. They are trading the intellectual property, while completely missing the physical reality required to keep those chips running. A single rack of modern AI servers now demands up to 130 kilowatts of power. That is a massive jump from traditional enterprise data centers, and it physically breaks the legacy systems we've relied on for the past 20 years. This diagram illustrates exactly where the industry is stuck. All that raw AI compute is trapped behind three severe physical and logistical constraints: data bandwidth, thermodynamic heat, and real-world deployment. First is the data bottleneck. Moving exabytes of information across thousands of connected chips creates extreme signal degradation. If the data stalls, the entire multi-million-dollar computing cluster becomes useless. Second, gigawatt-scale power consumption introduces a literal melting hazard. The hardware runs too hot for traditional air cooling. And third, we have to actually deploy this intelligence out of the digital realm and into physical supply chains, which requires massive robotic coordination. Institutional capital is quietly rotating into the specialized companies solving these exact problems. For every dollar spent on specialized GPUs today, an equivalent dollar must be deployed into the surrounding infrastructure. To fix the data transfer problem, hyperscalers turn to Astera Labs. They operate essentially as the high-speed plumbers for modern data centers. NVIDIA GPUs process data much faster than traditional copper wires and motherboards can handle. Astera designs specialized PCIe Gen 6 retimers that actively regenerate those high-speed signals. Without them, data loss over copper wiring is catastrophic. Integrating these retimers is strictly mandatory for any modern deployment. But the connectivity space is currently locked in a massive architectural war. On one side, you have Broadcom pushing its entrenched scale-up Ethernet. On the other, an open standard consortium called UAL-Link is trying to break NVIDIA's proprietary grip on GPU-to-GPU communication. Astera Labs is a foundational driver of that UAL-Link standard. If open standards win, their total addressable market expands aggressively. This near-term revenue velocity is exactly why the market is currently willing to pay a steep 122 times trailing price-to-earnings multiple for the stock. That high multiple comes with a very specific, long-term existential threat. The industry is actively trying to move away from copper wiring entirely. As speeds continue to push physical limits, co-packaged optics and photonic chiplets will use light instead of electricity to move data. By 2028, this optical transition threatens to render Astera's core copper-based retimers completely obsolete. Buying Astera Labs means accepting a strict trade-off. You secure massive near-term growth as the PCIe 6 rollout accelerates, but you have to actively monitor the risk of future optical disruption. Next, we have the thermodynamic gatekeeper. Vertiv Holdings builds the industrial hardware required to keep these gigawatt-scale facilities from literally burning down. At 120 kilowatts per rack, pushing cold air through a room violates the basic laws of thermodynamics. The heat simply cannot escape fast enough. Direct-to-chip liquid cooling systems are now a non-negotiable requirement for next-generation silicon. This bar chart visualizes the scale of Vertiv's commercial dominance. In a single quarter, their organic orders surged 252% year-over-year. They secured nearly $3 of new orders for every $1 of revenue recognized, building a staggering $15 billion backlog. Looking at this timeline, applying a traditional industrial valuation multiple to Vertiv doesn't work. That $15 billion backlog contractually locks in their earnings acceleration through 2027, offering a level of predictability that is incredibly rare in hardware manufacturing. But that predictability is tied to a fragile macroeconomic factor: global power grids. Data center construction is exposing chronic underinvestment in municipal power. Vertiv can manufacture all the cooling equipment in the world, but if grid constraints and municipal permitting delays halt physical data center construction, Vertiv cannot deliver their hardware. That means their ability to actually recognize that massive backlog revenue faces severe delays. Vertiv offers unparalleled financial visibility and safety within the AI sector, but as an investor, your near-term growth is entirely held hostage by the macro limitations of local utilities. Finally, we reach the real-world deployment bottleneck. Symbotic is pulling AI out of the digital realm of chatbots and physically applying it to the global supply chain. They build fully automated distribution centers using agentic fleet management. Thousands of autonomous mobile robots dart through three-dimensional space, storing and retrieving inventory without relying on rigid tracks or human-programmed heuristics. Scaling that level of density causes traditional software to buckle into traffic jams. To solve this, Symbotic co-developed highly optimized reinforcement learning algorithms with researchers from MIT, allowing the fleet to dynamically route itself in real time. This pie chart exposes Symbotic's single greatest investment vulnerability. Over 84% of their total revenue comes directly from Walmart. If that one client alters their capital expenditure timeline, Symbotic's cash flow takes a massive hit. To de-risk that dependency, Symbotic launched a joint venture called Greenbox. This shifts their business model to target the $500 billion warehouse-as-a-service market, allowing mid-tier logistics providers to access their automation via high-margin, recurring software subscriptions instead of massive upfront hardware purchases. Even with a $22.5 billion contract backlog providing an ironclad floor, complex physical installations cause unpredictable accounting timing. This creates brutal quarterly volatility when they miss earnings estimates on paper. Symbotic is a transition story. They are moving from heavy hardware installations into a SaaS model. If you buy in, you have to stomach intense short-term volatility and heavy reliance on a single retail giant. This three-column matrix maps exactly how to approach these companies. Grouping all infrastructure stocks into a single buy basket is a dangerous mistake. You need to align the specific bottleneck to your exact risk profile. First, we have the tech speculator. This profile maps directly to Astera Labs. As a speculator, you want maximum beta exposure to the open standard data networking shift, and you are comfortable paying massive valuation premiums to secure it. The trade-off is high maintenance. You cannot simply set and forget this position. You must actively monitor the 2028 optical disruption timeline to ensure their core product isn't being engineered out of existence. Next is the visibility pragmatist, which aligns perfectly with Vertiv Holdings. If you are a pragmatist, you demand the mathematical safety of contractually locked future cash flows over speculative hype. You want the $15 billion backlog. Your trade-off is accepting that explosive short-term upside is likely capped. The market is highly efficient, and Wall Street has already aggressively priced that order backlog into the stock. Finally, we have the venture-style risk-taker, mapping to Symbotic. You are buying into a massive SaaS pivot with huge long-term upside, but you must be willing to endure terrifying GAAP earnings misses whenever a hardware project hits a permitting delay. To capture the upside of the 2026 supercycle, investors have to stop chasing chip designers blindly. Identify your personal risk tolerance, look past the silicon, and put your capital